Yes, no, I know, I see. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so I'd like to discuss what the IPCC AR6 synthesis report misses. And it's not just that, it's really an honor to be able to speak to a community that is dealing with climate breakdown in ways that most of us have not. But the IPCC report is not the only report that misses or downplays, I think, some of the most important things. So, over the course of the last several days, I've reviewed a number of really amazing reports having to do with Pakistan and the upper Indus Basin and the challenges, the unbelievably big challenges that you all face. And it's been quite an education, I must say. Especially when you all have been dealing with really global weirding, hottest and coldest and driest and wettest, and really where the stability of the Holocene that allowed for civilizations to emerge is no longer present. And this is even without the full blast yet of El Nino. And so on this brief, I noticed that there was a caveat. Views expressed are of those of the author, do not represent the ISSI. So I think I should probably, out of professional courtesy, offer the same. So the views expressed in this presentation are of the author, me, Micheal Dowd, and may not represent those of the IRS. So we are already 2 to 3 decades into abrupt runaway and exponentially accelerating climate mayhem. And this is not just me saying this. These are the various conference on the parties, the various COPs. It turns out that our summits, our agreements, our promises and pledges are actually worse than meaningless. And the reason that they're worse than meaningless is that they give us the impression that we're making progress when the actual opposite is the case. In the 1960s, carbon parts per million was growing at 0.9 parts per million per year, 1.3 parts per million per year in the 1970s, 1.5 parts per million per year in the 1980s and 90s, 2 parts per million per year in the 2000s, 2.4 in the 2010s, and we're now looking at the estimates are between 3 and 5 parts per million per year throughout the 2020s. And so that's what abrupt, runaway, and exponentially accelerating. And it's not just climate change, it's, as you all have experienced, climate mayhem, climate chaos. And abrupt climate change, just to be clear, is like 10,000 years of climate change in half a human lifetime. And that's just the CO2 in the atmosphere. When you add nitrous oxide and methane, here's an image of the last 800,000 years. Here we have the peak glacials when the ice was at its maximum in the northern hemisphere. The ice age average was 220 parts per million. The pre-industrial average, which is ideal for growing grain, is at 280 parts per million. Agricultural collapse and civilizational collapse really become unstoppable at 360 parts per million. That's why there was an organization started called 350.org as an attempt to get us back down to 350. So the stability needed for agricultural and civilizations is this zone. But when I talk about climate change being abrupt, runaway, and irreversible, this is where we are now. We're over 500 parts per million in terms of CO2 equivalent. That's carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide combined. And we know, because we have the data that shows that over the last 400,000 years, carbon dioxide, global temperature, and sea level all rise and fall in lockstep. Now, sometimes one of them leads, sometimes another one leads, but as you can see, they all rise and fall in lockstep. And now we're way up here in terms of CO2 equivalent. Here's another chart that I just encountered maybe a month and a half ago that I found so useful. The last 22,000 years of global temperatures to the present, to 2023. So this is the temperature range during all of human civilization. This is the last 10,000 years or so. Here's where we are now. Here's where it's already baked in. We have no way that we can avoid that. I mean, some people fantasize that we could use technology, but that actually makes things worse. So this is climate change. 2 to 3 degrees Celsius rise over 15,000 years or so. This is a climate bomb going off. This is 2 or 3 degrees Celsius in merely 150 years. So denial often gets a bad rap. Denial is actually often adaptive inattention. Denial is the largely unconscious habit of thought, whereby we refuse to accept the reality of things that are bad or upsetting, or that challenge our worldview, our legacy, how we live, what is required of us, and or our feelings of self-worth or superiority. Denial is also the reflexive impulse to reject or discount information that calls into question our hopes, assumptions, or expectations about the future. I have denial instincts. You have denial instincts. Everybody that we know and love does, so we can have compassion for ourselves and each other. I can say confidently that tomorrow morning, if not later today, some of you will say, Micheal, Dowd is crazy. That can't possibly be true. And that's really okay. My wife took this photo. I've heard of denial. I just don't believe in it. So denial tends to show up in one of two ways. One is a compulsive shoulding all over yourself and others. That is using should. We should do this. I should do that. They should do this. The global north should do this. The global south should do that. These kinds of people should. So that's one way that denial shows up, is a compulsive shoulding all over yourself and others. Another is what I call the almighty universal we. It's a secular religious faith in omnipotent human agency, that because we can think of something, that we can do it. And here are some of the forms that it often takes: progress and development, biosphere management, climate restoration or geoengineering, global scale mobilization, evolutionary emergence of consciousness, global degrowth revolution, species level awakening, or social tipping points. And these, you know how sometimes you read a book, it's got 9 chapters of doom, and the last chapter is the happy chapter, which is if we all just this, then we can prevent these bad things from happening. So I found this cartoon helpful. It's not too late to stop the worst of climate change if we all accept reality and work together for the common good. And of course, the key phrase is if we all. We're screwed. Richard Heinberg famously said, our fundamental problem is not climate change. It is overshoot, ecological overshoot, of which global warming is a symptom. This is something that unfortunately many professionals don't really understand. Overshoot, even if somehow we could solve climate, which we can't. Climate is a predicament. It's not a problem with a solution or fix. It's a predicament that we have to adapt to. And even if we could, there are a half a dozen other planetary boundaries that we have already overshot, and some of these are actually in extinction level mode. So we don't, this is language we're not familiar with, ecological overshoot of carrying capacity. We think about deadly weather, which you all have experienced more than anybody, collapse of the oceans, plant and animal extinctions, topsoil poisoning and loss, critical resource depletion, chemical and nuclear wastes, the growing gulf between the rich and the poor, economic instability and really insanity, political polarization and conflict, contracting of in-groups, tightening up of in-groups, and the rise of totalitarianism and other isms. These are actually all symptoms of the same thing. They're all symptoms of ecological overshoot. And these first 3 are already in extinction level runaway mode. Powerful quote here. It is difficult to get a person to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it. Well, my adaptation to that is it's nearly impossible to get someone to understand what is collapsing their world and creating hell on earth when the answer is their own civilization. That's key. Collapse and ecocide, it turns out, are the inevitable fruit of human-centered civilizations. These are powerful quotes. Forests precede civilizations, and deserts follow them. All of our exalted technological progress, civilization for that matter, is comparable to an axe in the hand of a pathological criminal. Civilization is a hopeless race to discover remedies for the evils it produces. The end of the human race will be that it will eventually die of civilization. And the earth is littered with the ruins of empires and civilizations that once believed they were eternal. And that last one isn't an exaggeration. A few years ago, the BBC did a deep civilization series where it talked about, there was an article by Luke Kemp, are we on the road to civilizational collapse? And of course, he answered yes, because it turns out that collapse is a feature of all anthropocentric, that is not life-centered, but human-centered, agricultural, city-based civilizations. And he has a chart that shows 88 civilizations just between 3000 BCE and 1000 of the Common Era. If you go back before 3000 BCE, or if you look at the last 1,000 years, it's well over 100. And as the famous 20th century historian Arnold Toynbee said, great civilizations are not murdered, they take their own lives. And it turns out we know how. Here's how human-centered civilizations commit ecocide. And this is the last 5% of human history, the last 8,000 years. This period takes typically between 225 and 325 years. And there are more than 80 examples. We see progress, rise, boom. Ecological overshoot of carrying capacity is this whole process. That's where we use too many resources and we exude too much waste, and the natural systems that support us, the air, water, soil, forests, and life, begin to break down. And then there's regress, fall, bust. And this is an unstoppable process of collapse. In over 80 examples, there's not one single example in all of human history of any civilization becoming sustainable on the way down. It can't happen for very well-known reasons. As I said, it's unstoppable, and there's more than 80 examples. So we think of collapse often as the collapse of a building, but people won't know that this is an ecosystem. These are great giant redwoods that's in collapse. They're only producing cones. They're only producing babies where they're artificially watered. They don't have the fog and the rain that they used to have. So collapse is when a gradual downward trend in biophysical health and well-being goes into unstoppable decline, runaway, out of control, such as abrupt climate change, 10,000 years of climate change in half a human lifetime. Here is an image that shows industrial civilization over the last 270 years. We see a gradual downward trend in biophysical health and well-being going into out of control decline. It's known as the Great Acceleration. I've added a biospheric collapse because that's what it is. And all you've got to do is Google the Great Acceleration. You see all these charts. This is 73 years ago, and this is 23 years ago. And literally every single measure, the climatic stability, ice all over the world, Arctic, Greenland, Antarctica, mountain glaciers, the oceans, the soil, the mass extinction, everything. There's literally no system, no natural system upon which humans depend that isn't in not just decline, but is in precipitous freefall, unstoppable decline. So here is the painful, painful truth that none of us want to hear. This is repulsive. This is unacceptable. And yet, if we don't accept it, we in our communities will suffer. No matter how massive and effective is nonviolent civil disobedience, no matter who or which party is elected into or voted out of public office, no matter how many people change their habits, become vegan, stop flying, whatever, no matter how many supposed game-changing artificial intelligence-driven high-tech solutions are tried, no matter how much evolution of consciousness occurs in the next decade or two, no matter how aggressively we try to shift to renewables or net zero emissions, no matter how many lawsuits are filed against the biggest fossil fuel corporations, no matter how many psychopathic or sociopathic CEOs or bankers are imprisoned, and no matter how many accords, what is pledged or agreed to, or what laws are enacted, and that last one there, we have a lot of evidence for. No matter what, in other words, these extinction level tipping points are already in the rearview mirror. The loss of the world's ice, the Arctic, Greenland, Antarctica, mountain glaciers, and this itself would be totally catastrophic in terms of extinction. Because when most of the Arctic sea ice is gone, the serious global warming begins. I'm not going to go into details with this, but learn about phase change and latent heat. Methane belching from the permafrost, the methane hydrates, the clathrates, oil and gas wells. This is already in unstoppable mode. There's no way that humans can stop this. The ocean acidification that is becoming more acid, deoxygenation, and at least 25 feet of abrupt, nonlinear, that is in fits and starts, sea level rise. The former president of the Jacques Cousteau Society is a friend of mine, and he said at least 25 to 40 feet of sea level rises baked in. And that's true if every human being went extinct tonight. And so there were no carbon emissions from humans tomorrow at all. Or if everybody became an eco saint tomorrow, still 25 feet is at least baked in the next 150 to 200 years. The great burning, the great conflagration of the world's forest is already in out of control mode. Again, if every human being went extinct tonight, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide would continue to rise for the next 40 to 100 years because of the burning, the uncontrollable burning of the world's forests. The loss of most species, animals and plants, on land and in lakes, rivers, and oceans. And increasingly severe and deadly weather, storms, floods, droughts, hurricanes. So no matter what, these are already in place. So how do we deal with this? How do we emotionally feel with this? Well, I love this quote from Stephen Jenkinson, a death worker. He says, grief requires us to know the time we're in. The great enemy of grief is hope. Hope is the four-letter word for people who are unwilling to know things for what they are. Our time requires us to be hope-free, to burn through the false choice of being hopeful or hopeless. They are two sides of the same con job. Grief is required to proceed. And then Francis Weller, the work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. We're all familiar with the stages of grief, Kubler-Ross's stages, but on the way to accepting and trusting unstoppable loss, these also are relevant. We see these normal: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. I call those doom. That's being in the doom, focusing on all of the bad stuff, which is totally legitimate. And the grief tends to be excruciating and resentful grief. Post-doom begins with acceptance, trust, and faith, which is where the benefits, finding the gifts on the other side. Gallows humor is absolutely essential, and calm and courageous love and action. And this is what I call post-doom. Post-doom, no gloom, hope-free. It's a sweet, generous grief. We're not going to be away from grief. We're not going to avoid feeling grief, but it's a sweet grief. It's a grief that lets us know that we're profoundly in love with life. So just a quick summary overview. The stability of the biosphere has been in decline for centuries and in runaway, unstoppable collapse for decades. This great acceleration of technology and market-driven ecocide is an easily verifiable fact. The scientific evidence is overwhelming. Evidence is also compelling that the vast majority of people will deny this, especially those still benefiting from the existing order, those legitimately concerned about the consequences of collapse, and those who fear that accepting reality means giving up. And yes, that's most of us are in that paragraph. The history of more than 80 previous boom and bust, progress, regress societies clearly reveals how and why Homo colossus, that is industrial humans, where each of us uses 20 to 30 times the resources and and exudes 20 to 30 times the waste, how and why Homo colossus is committing ecocide. For communities hoping to collapse with dignity, generosity, and grace, nothing is more important than widespread acceptance and, obviously, faith. That's key. So my main website is Post-Doom. I have 90 conversations, regenerative conversations, discussion forums, and lots of resources for moving beyond and staying beyond doom. I hope my work is all about helping people have clarity over confusion, compassion over blame, and then calm and courageous love and action. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Micheal. This is all for you. So moving forward, let me share my concept note with all of you. According to IPCC AS6 synthesis report, as Micheal rightfully mentioned, extreme weathers are going to be more frequent and intense. And Pakistan is among the top 8 vulnerable countries, according to German Watch. And we are at the risk of extreme weather events as the El Nino, which return in June following the 3-year dip of La Nina. Science is very clear about the human-induced warming, and the warning lights are blinking red because humanity just witnessed its hottest days ever recorded in this month. We have 7 hottest days ever recorded, which is humongous. World Meteorological Organization cited temperatures above 50 degrees. Just wanted to mention it that 60 is the limit for life on planet Earth. We already crossed 50 degrees centigrade. Prolonged heat waves and domes of the charts of the wildfires, dangers like Canada, currently in Greece, whatever is happening around the world creates a tangible security risk to understand the states like Pakistan. And so it is important to mention that we are currently 1.15 degree. During this month, we witnessed 17.23 degrees centigrade temperature, which is 2 degrees warmer than the Earth mean temperature over the last 12,000 years. It's a big number and time. Climate-driven instability and conflicts are most likely to occur in Pakistan because of our politically and religiously polarized citizens, which are mostly dependent for their livelihood on natural resources and agriculture. We have a history of violence like Bola in 1970. 500,000 people actually died in that cyclone. And because of that, we have Bangladesh. And with the low adaptive capacity, which we have today in Pakistan. Now humanity is in the 3rd super El Nino in the last 15 years. Administrations of the several states have already signaled its prioritization to be more integrated approach to monitor environmental threats for epidemic forecasting and analytics. By modernizing local early warning system and trigger system to prevent, detect, and respond to extreme weather events, as seen in the case of hydrological disasters in 2022 alone. Loss and damage is beyond our ability to recover, and we finally requested for aid in the biblical crisis. No other single species in the history has affected the planet so profoundly in such a short length of time. While in 2021, Human Rights Council formally recognized healthy environment as a fundamental human right. To understand these issues and way craft forward, Institute of Regional Studies organizing this roundtable as a subject of Age of Adaptation under Life Under Crisis, a closing window for the future. And having said that, moving toward my first question and to my first speaker. Dr. Farooq, how meteorological department can help government agencies to enhance their legitimacy and capacity during the extreme weather event? Thank you.
Well, thank you. When we talk about Pakistan, we have Pakistan Meteorological Department. PMD is providing various types of services. For instance, for providing the forecast, drought assessment, and related to earthquakes and tsunami warning. So the role of meteorological department is important for climate security. If we talk about the institutions, here at ComSets, we have a Department of Meteorology, and we are offering different programs like MS Meteorology, PhD Meteorology, and we are also offering MS Remote Sensing GIS, PhD Remote Sensing GIS, and we are planning to start BS Remote Sensing and GIS. So these are the technologies that can be used for the weather-related activities. And apart from that, we are doing research on different activities related to the monsoon, related to floods, related to droughts. As we've seen the monsoon rainfall in the last year, those were above the normal precipitation. So the forecast was not that high, but due to that rainfall, we have seen floods in the southern Punjab and Sindh as well. So this was due to the extreme events. So basically, if in the past, what we were receiving more precipitation in longer time period. But now the situation has been changed due to many reasons, due to climate change. We're receiving heavy precipitation in less period of time. Like what we were receiving in 10 to 15 days, 200 millimeter precipitation. Now, like we are receiving same precipitation 1 or 2 days. And we can also see that due to urbanization, due to rapid increasing population, the due to urbanization and rapid increasing population, we can see that urban flooding, which is another factor. We have witnessed this issue in the Karachi in past 2 years, and in this year we've seen this similar incidents in Lahore as well. Then the changing pattern of precipitation. So in the past, the monsoon area was different, but now that pattern has been changed, monsoon has shifted, and there are so many other reasons as well. So if we talk about monsoon, we receive maximum precipitation in the month of monsoon from July, August, and September, around about 60 to 70% precipitation. And the remaining precipitation is received in the month of December, January, February, March. There is a winter precipitation due to western disturbances. So now the problem is that due to these extreme events, either we are facing floods or droughts. So if we receive heavy precipitation, that results into flooding, and the lack of precipitation is another problem that we're facing, that is drought. So we have faced various drought events in southern Punjab, in Sindh, and also in Balochistan. So we have seen meteorological droughts, hydrological droughts, and these droughts has a link with the food security. So if there's less precipitation and the drought condition, then obviously that will impact the agriculture production. So if the agriculture production is reducing, that will ultimately affect the food security. And the next important point in this regard is like climate security and the role of weather stations, are like, you can say, the meteorological departments with respect to the transboundary river issues. We have different rivers connected with our neighboring countries. For instance, we have Kabul River, we have Chenab River, and we have Indus River. These are we are sharing transboundary in all these rivers. So if the heavy precipitation is received across the border, and they have made dams as well, so after the opening of spillways, what we again see, the flooding in our areas. So the role of the meteorological department is to have the data in real time, where they may provide the data on the basis of those data sets. We can predict better way the flow of flooding, the precipitation pattern, and other activities as well. One important factor is like we've been working on this as well. Like you have mentioned in your intro as well. Those are the teleconnections. Like if the sea surface temperature is increasing or decreasing, what will be the impact of increasing and decreasing sea surface temperature on the weather pattern of Pakistan? Like if we are receiving heavy precipitation, or the temperature increasing or decreasing, how they are linked up. So these can be studied, and we have studied these patterns in the using teleconnections. So apart from that, we have if we see the northern part of Pakistan, we have glaciers, we have snow cover, and these glaciers and snow cover plays an important role for the availability of fresh water. As we all know that roughly 60% of snow cover is added in the Tarbela Dam, and that Tarbela Dam water is used for hydropower generation and can also be used for the agriculture productivity as well. So with the help of remote sensing and GIS, what we can do, we can use different models and we can map the snow cover during the winter season, and we can predict that how much water will be available in Tarbela Dam. So according to that, we can plan our agriculture land, we can plan the hydropower and the other activities as well. So the weather or the meteorological departments again can play their role for giving the exact information related to the snow cover and glaciers. And we have seen different reports, and we have like of EC mode and some other organizations as well, that the glaciers are depleting. So with the depletion of glaciers, the nature lacks that we have in the northern part of Pakistan, they're decreasing with the passage of time. Another aspect that is the GLOF events. So the GLOF event can also be mapped and monitored with the help of these weather departments or meteorological departments. They can play their role for the accurate information. So if I conclude all these things, the main aspect is the data, the information. So if we are predicting or if we are giving a forecast, if we have the true picture, then we can better give the exact picture for tomorrow. And for forecasting, we have two important aspects. One is the initial condition and second one is the boundary condition. So initial condition is what we have the current data of that particular area. And the boundary condition means what are the factors that will affect on that area. So we can improve the forecasting and the other factors as well. But the important part is the availability of data and the availability of accurate data.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Farooq, for this thing. And yes, I do understand that we need data. Currently, IMF just public is standby agreement with Pakistan, and they have a whole chapter for Pakistan. And in that, they actually tell us that we have 6 events from 2000 to 2022. We have 6 events every year in Pakistan. And because of that, 4 million people are directly affected. So 580 people lost their lives in every year due to these extreme events. These are recorded facts, which are collected through these data sets. Having said that, I just want to show you a small video of Guardian, which they actually collected for this month of July, and the things that happened all over the world. Please.
The situation we are witnessing now is the demonstration that climate change is out of control. If we persist in delaying key measures that are needed, I think we are moving into a catastrophic situation.
Me cago en mi padre. Me cago en mi padre. Me cago.
Los únicos no lo saben. Porque se intentaba rearmar, hay disparos y todo es bueno.
Ya me ha pasado en el estudio.
Claro.
Mira la que hay todavía en los árboles.
等防汛2级应急响应，并协调多部门展开强险救灾。据记者了解到，截至今天早晨，
As you have seen, this month of July is extremely hot all around the world. All the 7 continents around the world are hit by that. And why I'm saying this, because in the first 3 weeks of July, we actually the extreme weather events are actually featured in 114 front pages in 84 newspapers published in 32 countries. I'm talking about 32 countries in a month. And this happened is all around the world. From Arctic to every region around this world, we have these temperatures. And this comes to my second question, which is in all scenarios to Dr. Hanwar. In all scenarios, how can Pakistan keep a check and balance on implementing national adaptation plan, risk, and how we can avoid risk from maladaptations? Thank you. And just to be sure, every speaker got 5 to 7 minutes to conclude their answers. Thank you.
It was time when we were in denial about climate change, whether it's happening or not. I remember it was 2007, we had a seminar in Serena, and there was little consensus across the globe, although many researches and data supported things were available across the globe. And I remember there was a very big play by the Albert Al Gore, who did a very good awareness raising campaign through his film An Inconvenient Truth. So by the time we realized that climate is really happening, climate change is really happening. And after that, a decade or so, when full consensus across the globe is there, that climate change is there, there were some different arguments about mitigation, response, and adaptations. Mitigation is particularly for the reduction in emissions, you all know. But adaptation for those and from those scientists who believe that there is a cyclic period in the overall universe, and in that we observe ice age and changes in the circulation patterns there. So considering all that, I think the topic of today's discourse is age of adaptation. And adaptation for all, not only for the developed nation, there is no exception. Every nation needs adaptation, and Pakistan is one of them. We need it critical because our economy primarily is driven by the agriculture. And for agriculture, adaptation is a must agenda. And for agriculture, you know, agriculture is a provincial subject, a provincial context. Secondly, if we go into the nexus, then water, energy, and agriculture. These three are important. And this is particularly important for the environmental security. And for environmental security, adaptation, for better adaptation, there is a matter of governance. For the check and balance, you know, in the past, I would like to highlight very briefly that we are very good planner. Pakistani, being a nation, we are very good planner. We produce very good documents. I give you example. We had a very good response policy, climate change policy in 2001, effective 2012 onward. Then we produced a very good document, climate change framework for implementation of climate change policy. This very good and excellent example of the document so far produced by the national government. And it has given responsibility to the respective, to the concerned departments, including all agriculture extension department or irrigation department, whosoever, or the meteorological department concerned. The roles and responsibility categorically defined vis-a-vis the sector's requirement, vis-a-vis adaptation and mitigation agenda in agriculture, water, energy, and so many sectors. Those are relevant. Although there are still some shortcoming if talk about in maritime context or other, but overall it's a very good document. Where is problem? We also know, like we know the reality of climate change, we know the actions, what to do. We know we have a variety of ecosystem, everybody. In scientific circle, at least, there is a knowledge available. If someone say that we are blind on the issue, no. The answer is absolutely no, we are aware of. But we are in a denial mode. But denial mode is not in an active mode. It's basically in passive mode. Like if many of you or some of you have seen An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore given an example that's basically links with the reflex action. When we touch an hot object, suddenly, or even any prick to our finger, we have an action on that. We just pull out our hand. But the gradual change, we don't realize, we say, okay, after some time, we'll do something. So this is the particular mindset, which is basically linked with the passive denial. So we need to come out of this passive denial first. This is the important thing. Second thing is that we produce a very good document after devolution. You know, over a period of time, when I say that this National Climate Change Framework FICCP document and National Climate Change good document, same is the case was for the Ministry of Environment earlier before 18th Amendment, devolution of power. It was a very good because there was a foreign exposure on the subject. So good procedures and policies were evolved over a period of time, but all of a sudden after the 18th Amendment, it was shifted to the provinces. And now climate change is a provincial subject at the in the province. It's a part of Ministry of Environment, but at the federal level, Ministry of Climate Change was by accident, it was created to safeguard some pool of people or the subjects like multilateral environmental agreements or others. This was by accident formed at the federal level. So there is no acceptability and there is no trickle down effect, although we have National Climate Change Act in 2017 promulgated. It's 6 years gone, but still the actual requirement not trickle down at the grassroots level. For the adaptation, we need LAPAs, local adaptation plan of action, and that is very much important in district or the sub-district level. Particularly in when we are talking about agriculture extension services or the on-farm water management, because the water draw in the extreme weather events, we all know drought we would be experiencing in the future, whether we are ready, we have prepared, we are well prepared, we have developed some check dams or we have prepared some rainwater harvesting systems. In particularly this important in the where we have terrace cultivation in the highland areas. So these are a matter of concern. This is a matter of governance basically, and we need to seriously work for the implementation at the provincial and the sub-national sub-province level. For that, the last point, I think the time is almost near to finish, is the important thing is the financing. You all know that financing remain always under discussion. This very hot subject, hot because everything is driven by the money. So if financial allocations are there, then Agriculture Extension Department would be functional. So to operationalize actions are known, but to operationalize actions, to better adapt your farmers, we need to have active role of our institutions, and that role cannot be institutionalized or further, their capacity cannot be enhanced without putting money into that system. And for that, we cannot rely for the donor grants. We have to mobilize our own funds. We have to rely on our system. Last year in the COP27, loss and damage fund was created that basically linked for to compensate for the damages during extreme weather events. And still we are not ready. Like in IMF, last point, like in IMF grant or IMF loan, there was a lot of discussion on the system requirement. Same would be required for the system, for the donor grants, if we are recipient for loss and damage fund or any other fund, that whether our flow of the fund or utility would be accountable, is that accountable, transparent, vis-a-vis if national level receipt is there, then how it would be disbursed or transferred to the provinces or the local level. We have NFC level issue, big issue. So climate is also a serious issue. So we need to think around that how our system would work. So for the better check and balance, we need to operationalize our institutions, and for that, climate financing in our budget allocation national level for the institution at national, federal, provincial level is a need of the hour. And lastly, but not leastly, the operationalization of actual implementation of framework for implementation of climate change policy at subnational level. For that, provincial response strategies and course of action on similar lines is highly needed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Shah, for your kind interventions and insights. Just wanted to remind you that Pakistan, the major problem of natural disasters we have is hydrological ones. In the past 22 years, we have 70% of these hydrological disasters in our sites, and which actually affected all of us in every province, in every area we have. And the last flood of 2022, we are hit around about 80 plus districts are hit. If we talk about Pakistan geography, we have 110 districts around Pakistan, and so it's very important to talk about it. And just wanted to add something more to this. The Pakistan is expected to rise 1.3 to 4.9 to 2090. So it's a huge number. We cannot adopt at 1.15 how we can survive at 1.3 to 4.9 degrees centigrade. So moving toward my next question to Mr. Arif from Ministry of Water Resource. Sir, what is the Pakistan contingency plan to deal with the water scarcity, specifically talking about Himalayas? Because recently ICMOD published a report in which they mentioned that the glaciers are melting at the alarming rate. In 2010 to 2020, the glaciers are melt at 65% higher rate. So what is the contingency plan for us? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tala, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. The things I have been discussed in detail, and I will go before going to the remedies and the contingency plan. I will shortly brief about the per capita surface water availability of Pakistan in 1951 was 5,260 meter cube, which was reduced to the optimal level in 2016 that was 1,000 meter cube. And below that during the Pakistan has been converted from water stress to water scarce. And that is 2025. Pakistan will be a water scarce country. After implementing the constitution, implementing the irrigation department provinces, and considering the climate change, what we see, the north is suffering from the drought, from the flash floods, from the landslides, and sometimes these days, the wildfires, while the south is suffering the prolonged droughts. Currently, there are 1 million true wells in Pakistan which are pumping 55 million acre feet water. That is 20% of the water available in the canals for irrigation system. So, if we go for the remedials, the first thing, I do have this document, the National Water Policy, which was approved in 2018. Ministry of Water Resources is the custodian of this document, and there are many stakeholders. The first thing which we discussed and developed is we need to work on the behavioral change of every individual. Before going further, we need to do work on the behavioral change of every individual to ensure efficient and wise utilization of water. Because mostly, if you see, the water is being wasted. Rainwater harvesting at the domestic level, at metropolitan level, and then to the south, which is suffering from the prolonged droughts. We can have their barani dams, we can have their underground storage tanks, which can be utilized later on for the drought situation. Recycling of water at domestic level, at industrial level, and for that we need to segregate the grey and black water. The grey water comes from the kitchen, and that can be recycled with not so sophisticated technology, and that can be done. Remediation of irrigation system, the motto for that is more crop for every drop. The current flooding system of irrigation is also a vestige of water resources. Regulation of groundwater and tariff setting, because water has been treated as God-gifted thing without prices. And if we ensure its tariff setting, when it comes to price, then people used to take care of it. Protection of wetlands, Ramsar sites, and our glaciers. This is also one of the priority. Profitable use of flood water. If I am having this glass and you offer me this jug of water, I don't have the capacity to accommodate that all. For that, I need resources. For that, I need capacity building. So we are on that very much. And establishment of hydrometeorological risk reduction center. We are in cooperation with Met Department, Government of Pakistan, and working with that climate resilient water resource development. Desalinization of salt water, because we have seen and we can utilize that water as the UAE is also doing that process. The last thing is the boundary water sharing settlement, because we have to we have some of the waters come from Afghanistan, the River Kabul, from Kashmir and India, and repeatedly that we have already lodged a case against India on the Nival rivers, and that has been considered for arbitration. It's a great achievement. And the last thing is the introduction of biopesticides and fertilizer. Because of the persistent organic pollutants which are used as pesticides, poor retention time in soil is very much, and they used to penetrate with water to the ground later, ground aquifers, and they polluted. The last point is the water-related policies, like we have the National Environmental Policy, National Climate Change Policy, and the PIPA 1997 Act, which has been amended after the Clean Amendment. Now the provinces has their own provincial environmental acts. The clauses related to water sector, water development, or water resources must be implemented in true letter and spirits.
Thank you so much, Arif, for this wonderful insights. And I think it's important to talk about these things, to think out of the box approaches which we need. Because why I'm saying this, we are a agrarian country and we are becoming food insecure. There's a report published recently in which they mentioned 2.4 billion people, equivalent to 29.6% of the global population, do not have constant access to food in 2022. It's a huge number, and as we are considering our own pattern, we are going to be water and food insecure in the coming decades. And this comes to my next question, like Faheem. What unique climate-related information can security departments collect and analyze that would serve Pakistan national security, climate security specifically? Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you to IRS for having me and NST at this discussion. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll try to keep this brief. Firstly, I think we should appreciate the effort that many of our professionals are engaging in regarding the climate war that we have been dealing with. I'll call it war because we've done nothing to cause this climate problem, and yet we got the bad end of the stick. I was going through some numbers, and I mean, these numbers are just absolutely mind-boggling. You've got rains in South Asia, you've got fires in Greece, you've got heat in Europe, you've got heat in the US. That's not counting the Canada fires. I'm just being very brief. In 2016, 36 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide were apparently pumped into the air. And in 2022, 6 years later, this was at 41 billion. So not a single thing is being adhered to. And guess who bought most of the carbon credits? Since it's very interesting, it's very protected data, but the information that's available is, I'm coming to the answer in just a second. Toucan Protocol, Delta Airlines, Shell, Volkswagen, Audi, ENI were some of the top buyers and offsetters of carbon credits. I'd let that sink in. Then there's a talk of jet fuel, which I won't get into, and it's mind-boggling, the chemtrail issue. So when we come to the question of what unique climate change related information intelligence departments should have. So the first thing that we need to understand is what's exactly going on with Pakistan. Pakistan is facing climate changes, climate issues. MashaAllah, we have experts sitting here. We're also facing a war. Please try to understand that. Climate is a weapon as well. It's being used as a weapon. There are certain technologies which we have not discussed here, which apparently can influence weather. I'm not going to talk about that right now. But whenever there is a climate adjustment which suits a particular country, for example, India, they have used it to no end. Just a few years ago, it was Mr. Narendra Modi who publicly said that he will dry Pakistan to the bone, if I recall the words correctly. Now they're trying to flood us. So what does that represent? That represents war. This is an act of aggression. And they have absolutely no qualms about how they're going to use this as a tool of weapon, as a tool of war. So when we talk about our agencies and when we talk about ourselves, I think the kind of information that we need, and I'm very happy to know that, mashallah, we have experts who are gathering information. We need to, and if I dare use the term, we need to weaponize that information, because we need to understand, as you just said right now, Talha, 72% of Pakistan's issues in the past 22 years are hydrological. I was just about to say this, that if we can predict what most probably will happen to Pakistan, we can build prediction models. And then we can sort of, for example, start to take away those areas, depopulate those areas where we are going to have floods, or we can come up with some other mechanisms. Information is power. And if we have accurate information of the present, especially of the past, present, and then sort of push it into the future, you can build predictive models. With predictive models, you can sort of assess what most probably will happen. You know, for example, I was going through a list of things that you can foresee. There are foreseeable aspects, and then there are unforeseeable aspects. Foreseeable aspects, you know, temperature, behavior of winds, patterns of storms, scarcity, abundance of water, how the molten magma is changing as well inside the crust of the earth. We have absolutely, and if I would like to be corrected if I'm wrong, we have absolutely no information whatsoever on the changes in the ionosphere. We have not looked at it from that perspective. We are not testing the air up there of what gravitational changes there are, because they are affecting weather. So coming full circle and wrapping up my question, in agencies need information, and information has to have historical accuracy, present day relevance, for it to become predictable for the next, let's say, 2-3 years. Since I've spent most of my career in predicting things, so for me, this is extremely important. We sort of need to know, we need to sort of brush up on our information, and we need to sort of start new research projects into, I mean, I would love to hear what Pakistan's scientists have to say about the magma movements. The magma is changing within the Earth's crust. I would love to hear what the tectonic reports are. And there are 4 or 5 fault lines in Kashmir. And there are 7 fault lines underneath Islamabad. I don't know if you know this. So, I mean, we collate all this information, and my final point for agencies is that we need to converge information, not diverge information. If anybody has some information, they need to sort of bring it to one point instead of diverging it from there. Once you have it at one place, you can sort of come up with good action points. And we need to have everyone sitting at the table instead of just 1 or 2 people, like practitioners, policymakers, as well as scientists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faheem. Just wanted to add some information, more information that India is just launched a new program with the $6 billion funding and the National Research Foundation. And the 70% of that funding is coming from the private sector. And they are investing these $6 billion into research and development for these kind of things, how they can weaponize these more issues like water, air, and all the stuff they can produce.
Yes.
So these things are very real and they are coming. And I just wanted to show you that NASA actually generated a visual representation of greenhouse gas emission from the year of 2021. I just wanted to show you with it. Asif, can you play it? The second, the other one. Yeah. These are the CO2 emissions in the 2021 year alone. I was amazed when I saw this video. That's just. The data represent only 1 year. As you can see, it's humongous, and we cannot see even our own Earth if we have that. This comes to my last question, and this is for all of you. Anybody can answer it. And how can there be a better coordination between government official agencies and grassroots level implementers, which are going to implement these monitoring and evaluation facilitators, so they can provide a smooth disaster prepared response? We all know we need early warning systems. We all know we have plans. We all know we are lacking finances, but how we can connect these dots? And you represent all different departments in this government. So just wanted to know how we can better this. And anybody can answer, all of you.
The organization and everything. There are three tiers. The first one is the finance, second comes the administration and services, and at third we used to consider environment. This environment should be taken at the top priority, then the things will go further peacefully, inshallah.
Money changes everything, and money makes the world go round. I think what we need to do is like a Venn diagram. Everybody has their own responsibilities. It's time to sort of intersect those Venn diagrams. I mean, for example, if I'm doing something, if IRS is doing something, if the distinguished speakers are doing something, it's time to intersect. You don't need to necessarily have a separate fund to do these things. You just add it. You have to start by adding it to your existing responsibility as a priority, as you've mentioned. But the fact of the matter is, we need to be very clear of what to do and how to do it. Not. I think the time for searching is over.
I want to add in it.
Sure.
So basically, if we go to if we see the National Disaster Resource Plan that was published in 2019, so got into that plan, all the organizations like NDMA, PDMA, and DDMAs, and along with the armed forces and civil agencies, if they follow that plan, then things can be further improved, and we can give a better solution by following that plan, I guess.
I think this question is very big question. It's $1 million question. It's a matter of big concern, coordination. And the answer is very simple. Like all others said, our policy document and its planning document, implementation framework document is there. It's a very comprehensive document. Its extension at the province level, because it is roles and responsibility each institution is given. If funds are allocated against that document to the respective institution, then definitely this issue would be resolved to a certain extent, but not 100%. The provision of fund is a major issue. Who take the responsibility? So if you allocate funds, everybody takes the responsibility.
As I mentioned, $6 billion are actually granted to these R&Ds in India, and we need something like that in Pakistan and 70% of that resource are coming from the private sector, from the local private sector, which actually invested in these kind of things. Sir, you want to add something?
Thank you. I'm not an expert. I'll give you the street version of what's been happening and what is happening. My basic thing is एहसास, कौम के अंदर एहसास कि ये क्या हो रहा है हमारे साथ या हम खुद अपने साथ क्या कर रहे हैं. Zero. मैं छोटी सी एग्जांपल दूंगा जी. Islamabad is supposed to be a hell of an educated city. I go for a run in the morning and I see the houses of everybody, and there is one house where there are 4 Land Cruisers which are washed every day, and the water hoses do not have a gun. So वो जब वो साफ कर रहे होते हैं तो वो पाइप जमीन पे पड़ा हुआ होता है. So I couldn't resist, so I had an argument with them. उन्होंने कहा साहब आपको क्या ताल्लुक है, हम खुद बोर कर रहे हैं, हमारा अपना पानी है. So, अगर एजुकेटेड आदमी का ये हाल है, अब इसका मैं जवाब जापान से दूंगा जो मैंने थोड़ी रिसर्च की. In Japan, every house has 2 meters for water. One is the intake meter, in which you pay for the water that you are consuming, and the other is the exit meter. The more waste water you exit from your house, the more you pay. It's a very interesting phenomenon that your gray और black water की आप बात कर रहे थे, जो gray water है उसके लिए exit meter लगा हुआ है. So अगर वो ये सोच रहे हैं हमारे यहाँ, तो इसकी सोच ही नहीं है. कंवर साहब से मैं बिल्कुल एग्री करता हूँ पॉलिसीज के ऊपर. हमारी पॉलिसीज का, having stayed in the government for some time, I think our policies have 2 problems. The first thing is the 5-year cycle of our state mechanism. उसमें कोई continuity नहीं है. जो political government आती है वो 5 साल तक देखती है, उससे आगे नहीं देखती वो. So the policies have to be depoliticized. हमारी 5-year plan has been adopted by South Korea and who not. We left it. Pakistan had electric trains. I think very few of us would have traveled. I am one of the people who traveled in an electric train in Pakistan. But when that government went away, finished. चलती हुई train बंद की हमने जी. A train is a very good instrument of avoiding pollution. Each train carries the load of maybe 100 trucks. Trucking mafia stopped the trains. NLC was involved in it, and now the trucking mafia controls the whole system. Even in the last Imran government, I was trying to, not through the government, but other people, to enforce emission laws on trucks. The Commerce Minister, Mr. Dowd, the Industry Minister, He went into, सज्जन में चले गए कि इंडस्ट्री तबाह हो जाएगी अगर आपने emission control कर दिया. You will be shocked that every city had motor vehicle examiner in Pakistan. All vehicles were examined for emission. Now we are very proud every year कि पता नहीं 1.5 करोड़ मोटरसाइकिल आ रही है यहाँ पर पाकिस्तान में. They are all emission hazards. Chingji is a azab for this country. हमने उसको encourage किया. Deforestation वगैरह तो छोड़ दें. अभी ये है कि मसलन Quetta Valley is drying up. I have served in Quetta and we found out in British times you had to take permission from the Commissioner Quetta, and at that time Commissioner Quetta was the only commissioner in Balochistan who would give a permission for burning. तो अब क्वेटा वैली की वाटर लेवल ड्रॉप हो गई है और इट इज गोइंग टू गो ड्राई. लेकिन एहसास नहीं है. आई वाज इन क्वेटा फ्यू डेज अगो. व्हाट देखेंगे. सो आई थिंक ये जो एहसास का इस्तेमाल है ये बड़ा खतरनाक है जिसको हम नहीं देख रहे. मसलन बिल्डिंग लॉज है. बिल्डिंग कंक्रीट एंड ब्रिक एंड मॉर्टर. इट डज नॉट से कि एक आपने टावर बनाया है उसके अंदर 3000 आदमी रह रहे हैं, वो कितना पानी पर कैपिटा कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं, कितना वेस्ट वो जनरेट कर रहे हैं. वो आप सीडीए में चले जाए यू विल नेवर फाइंड इट. एलडीए में चले जाए यू विल नेवर फाइंड इट. आप अपना घर 1 इंच यूं बना दें तो वो आप पे 5 लाख का जुर्माना कर देते. सो इट इज अ कोल्ड ब्लडेड एटीट्यूड, नेशनल एटीट्यूड. और 18th Amendment, amongst other disasters, this is the major disaster that it has brought. ये चीज प्रोविंशियल में भी नहीं चलेगी जी. मैं आपको बताऊं ये म्यूनिसिपल में जाकर चलेगी. अर्बन क्राइसिस जो है ये म्यूनिसिपल में चलेगा. और आई थिंक यू आर वेरी राइट. फ्लडिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर इज टू बी स्टॉप. मैं अब भी छोटा सा एक एग्रीकल्चर का कोशिश कर रहा था तो वहां बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज थी जी. हमें एड मिली थी फॉर स्प्रिंकलर सिस्टम्स. हमने वो सारे एड में लिए और ब्लैक मार्केट में बेच दिए. सो आई थिंक एहसास का जो फैक्टर है जी उसका कोई जवाब.
This is actually really true, and I do agree with that. We often have a fragmented short-term and project-based approach rather than a comprehensive one. I just wanted to take a comment from that lady. Sorry, ma'am, we do not have mics here.
We need to target it. And the way to target it is a top-down thing, a target to get the money.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And this is actually very true. Sir, you want to add?
Yes, I'm Dr. Amjad Masood from Water Resources section of Global Change Impact Study Center. I want to add a few points, although many points have been discussed over here. Actually, climate problem is basically a water problem in Pakistan. Whenever there is a rising temperature, we see sea level rise, glacier melting. Whenever there is more precipitation, there are floods, cyclones, gulf events, and snow events in northern areas. And when there is less precipitation, we face droughts. And these things we face simultaneously in every year, mostly. Last year, we faced snow event, very tragic snow event in Murray, and then we faced high temperatures, heat waves, droughts, and then super flood in the same year. So what we need actually is Pakistan can be divided into three major zones. In the uppermost part is called source region of water resources of Pakistan, where mostly our snow and glaciers are there to produce 60 to 80% of river flows we have. And then the second one is the water use region, where most of the agriculture and industries we have, and more than 90% of water resources are utilizing in the central part. And last part is the Indus Delta region, which is one of the very diversified delta system over the world. So each zone has different challenges and problems. The upper part we have in the source region, we don't have very spatio-temporal data sets we don't have, which is very big issue that we specifically more than 5,000 meters above we have most of our glaciers, and we don't have any climate data. Although our data agencies like WAPDA and PMD, they are trying to install over there, but at the moment the highest station we have is at 4,700 meter in Hunza Valley. So this is we need to increase our data network over source region, and then to adapt our water resources and make our country more resilient, climate resilient. So in the water use region, we need to have more good irrigation practices for agriculture, and distribution system we need to improve. And the other thing is transboundary issues we have discussed, our many colleagues have discussed. We have Indus Water Treaty with India, but we don't have any treaty with Kabul, right?
Yeah.
So we need to have some similar treaty with Kabul, as we have shared water resources in Kabul river flows. And, it is a very snow-rich basin. And we did a study and over on this basin, and there are more floods in the future events in the context of climate change scenarios. So also in this water treaty, climate change is not addressed. We also need to think about that also.
Yep.
Similarly, in the Delta region, our extinction of biodiversity because of less environmental flows, we cannot supply more flows below Kotri, which is also a big challenge, because of that reduced flow, there is always a gradient, a chance of gradient of sea water intrusion, and because of which our groundwater quality is can be deteriorated. So we have to address these all points.
So, and I truly acknowledge you on this because we are lacking data. To be very honest, on the very crossroad level, we are lacking it. And why we are lacking it? Because we don't have sensors over there. As simple as that. This couldn't be much more complicated. We do not have sensors, and that is why we do not have these kind of data sets. So what we need is those sensors, and that can be developed locally. The R&D can be if we connect all the departments, academia can develop those pathways through research, which could be deployed into the market. And just on the last, I'm going to open the floor for Q&A session for all the attendees. If you want to ask anything, you can first introduce yourself and tell about your organization, then ask a question. Thank you. Just wanted to set the Micheal is in USA, and the time over there is around about 3 a.m. in the morning. So just wanted to acknowledge this, and thank you, Micheal, for this. I just came to know that we have a question and like to answer it. So if you allow us,
Please.
before it, Micheal, you can answer the question.
Sure. The question, how worried should you all be as citizens of a climate vulnerable country about the re-election of Donald Trump, considering his climate denial? To be absolutely honest, America is not a democracy, and it really doesn't matter who is the president, no matter how they may seem to be for renewables or for solar or whatever. Yes, Donald Trump would be horrible for climate in terms of policy, but even all of the policies that the Biden administration wants are not feasible. The more technology, the market, technology, and human innovation are actually the causes of ecocide in the first place. So I think things are going to continue to spiral down no matter who is president in the United States. And I think it's actually pretty much out of our control how fast they spiral down. I think it's that out of control at this point. And I know that sounds pretty doomy, but I'm a post-doomer. I'm not a doomer, I'm a post-doomer. But you have to go through at least a little bit of doom to get to the post-doom place.
Well, thank you so much. As wanted to mention that when I came to first know about Micheal, I heard his presentation. And as an environmentalist, as a student of environment, I cannot pass through 15 minutes. The things he was saying over there was horrible to me, that how we can even survive in that kind of conditions. So thank you so much, Micheal, for having us. And you want to ask?
No, I'm just grateful for the invitation and the courage it must have taken for you and others to even invite me. And I'm just deeply honored and grateful to be able to have had this experience today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Micheal. Have a good day. And
okay,
over to you. So you wanted to add something?
I want to answer according to my point of view. Actually, adaptation part is not ignored. I just want to inform you about government projects which are being carried out in Ministry of Climate Change. In climate change, there are some projects what I want to highlight over here. There is GLOVE project, GLOVE 2, that is called. In this, there was a GLOVE 1 project for Upper Indus Basin. There are glacial lake outburst floods in Upper Indus Basin every year because of surging and retreating glaciers, right? So in these projects, in the GLOVE 1, there were early warning system was installed and for only 2 sites. But in this GLOVE 2, there will be working on this is in progress to install 24 sites in Upper Indus Basin, Gilgit-Baltistan and KP. Similarly, recently, Recharge Pakistan project has been approved of about $77 million, in which flood waters will be diverted to barren lands and to recharge our groundwater resources as well. And also, it will be very good to address our flooding situation. Similarly, there is working on a living Indus project, which is a very good project from Upper Indus Basin to Arabian Sea. It will be all along there will be many projects on this mega project. So you have also heard about billion tree, 10 billion tree and billion tree tsunami projects. Similarly, Clean and Green Pakistan. These all our projects are about adaptation. So this is my.
Yeah, I think these all projects are wonderful. Just wanted to ask Dr. Anwar if you want to add something. Sorry, I cut you down over.
No problem. I think for the country like Pakistan, there is a misconception about adaptation or the mitigation. We need both responses. Even at the global level, there is always remain in the international negotiations, push and pull factors are there. This is politics. Politics of the money is there. If you talk about the Trump regime, there was politics over the youth employment. The Trump came out of the Paris Climate Agreement, then again US into the business in this due to curtail the GHG emissions. As far as to take benefit from the projects like what we, my friend has told 3-4 projects about GLOVE and some other Recharge Pakistan, the Living Indus project. So as far as the Billion Tree Tsunami project is concerned, it's about mitigation as well as adaptation, both comes together in this project. It's very good project or very good initiative. Whosoever did this good thing. As far as the GLOVE is concerned, this good initiative in the past, at least early warning system was enacted. But so far, what has been advocated about the early warning systems, so yesterday there was a program by the National Disaster and the WWF Pakistan, but in that 7 early warning system was advocated that is the but unfortunately it's not the reality on ground. Unfortunately, particularly in the maritime domain at Gwadar, the early warning system is dysfunctional, and that's critical for the security, human security of the people working at sea. Secondly, the project, Living Indus project, is like would likely be, for me, if I analyze as an analyst and impartial opinion, such kind of project should be discouraged. What we have experienced from the past 7-year project, multi-million dollars involved in Pakistan wetland program. And after 7 years, after the devolution, it was started back in 2005 and till 2012 it was there. And there was a big surveys, millions of dollars spent. It was a Ministry of Federal Ministry of Environment's baby, and it was executed by WWF Pakistan. But after implementation today, who is taking ownership of the wetlands? No one. The answer is absolutely no. So such kind of projects where the money is lost should not be. But for the actual adaptation needs where we know the actions in the highland area, we need check dams, rainwater harvesting, we need those to build micro hydels, all that. There are some initiatives, those are good initiatives, but it's not ignored agenda. But at the same time, mitigation is also important. If you are talking about per capita, we have population, but if you divide our emissions on the geographical boundary, let me just finish it. This is a very technical aspect. If you compare it with India, vis-a-vis the geographical spread of the emissions, and also with the America. So our impact would be more than America and the India, if you think around that way, just not per capita emission per capita, but we are living on a small piece of land compared to India or America. And emissions don't have geographical boundaries, and due to retaining heat, they disturb the circulation pattern. And those circulation pattern, La Nina or El Nina, this ultimately affecting the weather or the climate system is basically linked with those emissions. So think around that. Come out of the philosophy of per capita. In the past, there was one project, Lahore Compost Project. It's a carbon trade mechanism under UNFCCC. If you are talking about mitigation, adaptation, you are aware of about the carbon trade. We did not take benefit out of that. I just wanted to highlight that. Those were the money we could have earned through the projects. We should have been focusing. China and India took benefit. Even they constructed a dam on the Neelam Jhelum. And for that, my friend was saying that India has data. They shown the EIA, transboundary EIA, socio-economic survey there in the consultation in UN Executive Board for the CDM, Clean Development Mechanism, and that was based on fake data. And for my dear friend, this is the reality. We need to think around climate diplomacy, climate governance, and the national and the provincial context for the better adaptation, as well as we need some mitigation response.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ma'am, just to be short, please. If yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just wanted to going to conclude this session. I just wanted to show another short clip to you. That is the month of July. In this month, all continents of the world are hit. Just have a look.
Like this house in Karatsu City, landslides have blocked roads.
Canada is on track to enter the battling what experts believe is the most severe wildfire season.
That is wild. ये है छोटा हरिद्वार सब अपनी बाइक
Just wanted to tell all of these are the real images. There's no editing, there's nothing. These are collected by the local folks over there. So things are horrible. Thank you. I may ask Ambassador Nadeem to conclude this session, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank Micheal. Micheal, I hope you're still there. Okay, but I had a good conversation with Micheal about a few weeks ago, and we talked about climate change, and it was most informative. I think he set the ball rolling today by in 15 minutes talking about what climate change is all about and what it does to all of us, to the world. I don't think there is any single country which is not affected by climate change. And in the same breath, I would say there's no single country which can actually mitigate the harmful effects of climate change. Basically, you do require collective action. I heard very intently all the speakers answering the various questions which were placed to them. But I think the most important thing is it's the awareness. And along with the awareness, I think the most important thing is the changing the mindset of the people. Because being aware is something different. But even if you are aware, are you planning to do something about it? Are you planning to change your lifestyle? Are you really planning to adapt and transform yourself to mitigate the harmful effects of what nature is going to throw at you? Well, I think the first part is accepting the problem, which I think the world has because you have so many cops. The second part is, what do you want to do about it? Countries like us, which are not polluters, are the 8th most affected country in the world because of climate change. But can we on our own mitigate and adapt to what is going on? Obviously, the answer is no. Climate change, in my opinion, basically affects your national security. And your national security is not only affected by the geostrategy or the geo-economic situation in which you are placed, it's also what the nature throws at you. Food security, forced migration, moving into mega cities, that all has an impact on your national security. So national security is not only protecting your borders or fighting terrorism, it is also looking at all these other important factors. From a food surplus country, we have become a food insecure country. As the population continues to grow, so with every passing minute, we have more hungry mouths to feed. Water is depleting. We have been unable to use the water which has come down from the glaciers and from the floods. We unfortunately continue to, and we will always remain a lower riparian. regarding water which comes from India or which comes from Afghanistan. We've had our policies to tackle climate change. Very personally, I am not a great advocate of the 18th Amendment because I feel it has actually given too much of power to the provinces to tackle issues which they are incapable of handling due to the fact that they have issues of capability and issue of resources. The one size all fits theory does not hold true when you are dealing with the issues of climate change in KP or the issues of climate change in Balochistan or the issues of climate change in Sindh or for that matter in Punjab. To date, we have followed an approach in which the policy flows from the top, goes to the provinces, and then goes to the district. With a shortage of data, I wouldn't say a lack of data, a shortage of data and of the right data, in my opinion, and it is open to a debate, I think the flow of information should be from the grassroots level to the provinces and then to the federal government. The policy which will then be made would be a policy which would take the situation on ground into account. We do need early warning systems. We do need a complete revamp of our agricultural policy because we are at the present moment basically using a lot of water for crop cultivation. And if you look at the modern methods which are used elsewhere in the world, you can do the same with drip irrigation. The only problem is that we personally feel that there is a lot of water at our disposal, but it is fast drying up. And very soon, according to the various projections which are there, 2040 is the year. You will have a problem after that. I couldn't agree more with what a few of you unanimously agreed on. That we need to pool our resources, we need the practitioners, we need the academics, we need the scientists, and they should all pool their resources and give the necessary policy inputs to the policy makers for implementation. We all work in our silos. We have the information, but somehow I feel that we are pretty shy in sharing it. The problem of climate change is one universal, and it is across Pakistan. So even if you have your information with your organization, which you are not willing to share, you are not really working in the national interest. So to work in the national interest, we need to pool our resources. And precisely for that reason, IRS last November decided to start a new program on climate change. One, to bring awareness. Secondly, to give our inputs into the government machinery. And we give those inputs based on what you tell us. You are the experts. We take the knowledge from you, we synthesize it, we try to reduce it into a 1.5-page brief. and we send it to the concerned stakeholders, like the National Security Division, like the various ministries. We've recently sent something on policy making regarding policy making from the grassroots levels to the Ministry of Climate Change. So please continue to attend our events. We will continue to hold them. Thank you very much for your invaluable contributions, because your contributions, they make us wiser. And based on the inputs which we get from you, we try to formulate something which the policy makers can then reflect, look at, and then use it for the betterment of our national security and of our national interest. Thank you very much.